Hello and welcome to BYJU'S IAS. Let's get started with the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper, beginning with a news item on page number 2 of the Delhi edition of The Hindu, relevant for GS paper 2. The Delhi High Court allows termination of 24-week pregnancy due to fetal abnormality. But in this session, let us look at Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act 1971. It was amended recently. The Parliament passed the bill. This bill was assented to by the President of India last week. So this Medical Termination of Pregnancy Amendment Bill is now the act. It is the law of the land. If you look at abortion, abortion was criminalized in India when Indian Penal Code was enacted in the year 1860. Under section 312 of Indian Penal Code, abortion was a crime unless it is carried out to save the life of a woman. The one who would perform abortion was liable to 3 years in jail, and the woman herself, she was liable to 7 years in jail. Even then, abortions would be carried out illegally in unsafe conditions, and thus there was a need to provide for a legal framework within which these abortions should be carried out in a safe environment. A committee was set up. It was headed by Mr. Shantilal Shah, and based on the guidelines of Shantilal Shah Committee, Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act, it was passed in the year 1971. According to this law, up to 12 weeks pregnancy could be terminated, abortion could be carried out, but on the advice of one medical doctor. If the pregnancy is between 12 to 20 weeks, then also abortion could be carried out, pregnancy can be terminated, but only on the advice of two doctors. Pregnancy beyond 20 weeks was not allowed, and that is why the aggrieved individuals had to knock the doors of the court, because they would petition the courts that this pregnancy may lead to fetal abnormalities or other complications. That is why please allow us to abort this pregnancy. And then on the orders of the court, the abortion was carried out. There was a need felt to relax these requirements. Why? Science has made huge gains, advancements. Doctors, through various diagnostic tools, they could now know if the fetus is suffering from any abnormality or not, or any threatening disease or not. So there was a demand to increase this period up to which abortion could be carried out, could be legalized. And that is why this law was amended. Medical Termination of Pregnancy Amendment Bill was introduced in the Parliament. It was passed by both houses of the Parliament, and last week it was signed by the President of India. Now, according to this amendment, now up to 12 weeks, pregnancy could be terminated, again on the advice of one doctor. Between 12 to 20 weeks, again, pregnancy could be terminated. Here the change is again on the advice of only one doctor. And now pregnancy, if it is between 20 to 24 weeks, it can still be terminated, but based on the advice given by two doctors. So this period has now been increased. Even beyond 24 weeks, this is a significant change. Even beyond 24 weeks, the pregnancy can be terminated, but for that, the recommendation of this medical board is necessary. And we will discuss what this medical board is. If this medical board certifies that if the pregnancy continues, the child born would be with significant fetal abnormalities, then the pregnancy could be terminated. But one significant thing, both under the 1971 law and this amendment, on the advice of one doctor, if this doctor certifies that it is necessary to carry out abortion, otherwise it's going to be dangerous to the life of the pregnant woman, abortion can be carried out. Now you might argue, now how has the law changed? Because even before, any time during pregnancy, abortion could be carried out, but it was only on the basis of one condition. If it is dangerous for the life of a pregnant woman, then abortion can be carried out. If the fetus is suffering from some complications, some disabilities, no abortion could be carried out. Now let's look at the arguments in favor of these amendments. Number one, both unmarried as well as married women, they are now given option to terminate pregnancy if The pregnancy is because of the failure of any contraceptive method or a device. That means contraceptive pills, if they have failed, and because of their failure, it has resulted in the pregnancy. This is now a ground for the termination of pregnancy. Abortion is legalized. Now, what about these medical boards? All the states and union territories, they will have to constitute medical boards, which will include gynecologist, pediatrician, radiologist or sonologist and other members as may be notified by the government. What will be the role of this medical board? If the pregnancy has exceeded 24 weeks, then if this medical board certifies that if the pregnancy continues, if the child is born, the child will be born with significant abnormalities. In such a case, pregnancy can be terminated, abortion can be carried out based on the recommendation of this medical board. And then there is a clause of confidentiality. That means the doctors, the practitioners who would perform abortion, they don't have to reveal the identity of the woman whose pregnancy has been terminated. One significant argument in favor of these amendments is a liberal one, a progressive one. Because for the first time, the law is talking about woman and her partner. Because previously, only married woman and her husband could apply for abortion. Now this language has been changed to also include woman and her partner. That means it is not only for married couple, it can also be for live-in relationship couples that abortion can be carried out. Let's look at New Zealand. New Zealand Parliament recently passed a law to allow woman and her partner to take 3 days paid leave in case there is a miscarriage. In India, we already have this provision. According to Maternity Benefit Act, a woman is entitled to a paid leave for 6 weeks after the miscarriage. But then there are concerns. Concern number one, what if the pregnancy is the result of a marital rape? Marital rape as a concept is still not recognized by Indian jurisprudence. That is why it is not included in this law as well. If pregnancy is the result of marital rape, no abortion. That's concern number one. Concern number two, these amendments require the termination to be performed by only doctors with gynecology or obstetrics specialization. When we look at World Health Organization, the recommendation of WHO is that we should have one doctor for every 1,000 population. If you look at India, in India we have one doctor for every 10,189 people. The year was 2018 as report was published. All India Rural Health Statistics Report. According to this report, we have only 1,351 gynecologists and obstetrics specialized doctors in rural areas, which means there is acute shortage of these specialized doctors. When there is acute shortage of these specialized doctors, these women who want to go for abortion, they would go to quacks. They would go to unqualified people to carry out abortion, and it is also going to be dangerous for the life and safety of women as well as the newborn. Then what is the solution? The solution is to allow Ayush practitioners. The solution is to allow the staff nurses. The solution is to allow trained midwives to carry out this abortion as well. Then there is another concern. According to United Nations, India accounts for 45.8 million of world's missing females. Who are these missing females? Women who are missing from the population because they have been killed after the parents came to know about the sex of the fetus. Now the concern is that because of these changes, these amendments, the concern is that this act will lead to more and more missing females. However, there are health experts who say abortion happens normally in the first trimester. Because when we break 9 months pregnancy, we can break it into a period of 3 months each. And this period of 3 months is known as trimester. So health experts say most abortion, they happen in the first trimester when the gender of the fetus is not yet clear. So this fear that this act will lead to more and more missing females, this concern or this fear may also be baseless. But then there is another issue. This act, it overlaps with 2 other acts. One is Preconception and Prenatal Diagnostic Techniques Act 1994, and Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act of the year 2012. According to this act, sex selective abortion is a crime. That means after going through a diagnostic tool, you found out that the gender of the fetus is female, and that is how you kill the fetus. You kill her inside the womb of her mother. You carry out abortion. This is a crime. And then under Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act 2012, it is mandatory for the doctors that you have to report sexual offences against children. Now, let's say, for example, there is a girl and she has been unfortunately raped and the pregnancy is the result of the rape. Then she should be allowed to abort her child, abort the fetus. But according to the law, she is allowed to abort the fetus according to Medical Termination of the Pregnancy Act. But then there is this POCSO Act which mandates that the doctors will have to report this crime to the police. Then what will happen to this confidentiality clause, wherein the doctors and the medical practitioners, they don't have to reveal the details of the woman whose pregnancy has been terminated? But this concern can also be taken care of because the law says, except the person who is authorized by law, to this person we can reveal the identity of the woman. But then there is another concern, and that is related to age of consent. A girl in India, she cannot consent to a sexual intercourse, to a sexual relationship less than the age of 18. The age of consent is 18. That means a girl having sexual intercourse with a boy less than the age of 18, it is a rape. There is one argument which says don't criminalize the natural desires of women. A girl who is less than the age of 16 or 18, if she is involved in a sexual interaction because of which it may lead to accidental pregnancy, that should also be taken into account. Consensual sex should be kept out of the criminal system. But then there are two other concerns regarding these amendments. Number one is the right of a woman. Today, according to the law, a woman may terminate pregnancy if she needs it. That means if it is required for her to terminate the pregnancy. Because of that need, she is allowed to terminate the pregnancy. What if the woman wants to terminate the pregnancy? The pregnancy is not going to affect her health. The pregnancy is not going to affect the health of the newborn. But this pregnancy is something which is unwanted. After a point, the woman feels that I do not want to go ahead with pregnancy. The law does not allow her choice. The law says that only if it is required, only if there is a need to terminate the pregnancy. Medically, if there is a need to terminate the pregnancy, we will allow it. So this law, it falls short of the right to privacy judgment given in K.S. Puttaswamy case. In that judgment, a 9-judge bench of the Supreme Court said right to privacy is a fundamental right. Justice Chandrachud, who was one of the judges on the bench, he said this right to privacy also includes a right to abstain from procreating. This right to abstain from procreating is also viewed as a fundamental right under right to privacy. But since this right is not still given to a woman, her bodily autonomy is compromised. That is why some people say autonomy is with the state, whether the state will allow pregnancy to be terminated or not. This autonomy is not with the woman. That is why there is this one concern regarding these amendments. And then there is another concern, and that has got to do with ableism. Ableism is basically discrimination against people with disabilities. And what is this concern of ableism? Look at the provisions of this law. More than 24 weeks, if the medical board certifies that if the child born will be with significant substantial abnormality, then pregnancy can be terminated. Now this, some activists say, goes against the people with disabilities. They also have the right. They also have the right to come to this world. These activists, they raise one important concern. They say pregnancy can be terminated up to 24 weeks, and it can be terminated beyond 24 weeks as well. Beyond 24 weeks only if the fetus will suffer from abnormality. That means it is medically okay to carry out abortion even after 24 weeks. Here the logic given was we cannot go beyond 24 weeks and allow pregnancy to be terminated beyond 24 weeks because then the woman would be in a danger. The pregnant lady would be in a danger. That is why up to 24 weeks we are allowing. But here if you are allowing even after 24 weeks, that means it is possible to terminate pregnancy even beyond 24 weeks. But here you are saying only if the child would suffer. If the child is born, the child will suffer from significant abnormalities. Then we will allow abortion. That means in both the cases, it is possible to allow abortion even after 24 weeks. So why don't you allow beyond 24 weeks as well and include the right of a woman to decide and choose for herself when and how she wants to deliver the child. So that is what you need to understand from article number 1. Now let's look at another newspaper article, disqualification pleas, Goa speaker to rule on April 20. Now we know we have a law called Anti Defection Law, which was passed in the year 1985. There is a detailed video lecture on Anti Defection Law available on our YouTube channel. Please go through that video lecture. I think everything related to Anti Defection Law would be crystal clear to you. But what is this newspaper article all about? If you recall, something happened in Manipur. What happened in Manipur? There was one MLA who contested the election on the Congress ticket, but then he defected to the BJP and he was made a minister as well. T. Shyam Kumar was the name of this MLA. And the speaker was not acting against this MLA at all. Because quite naturally, under anti-defection law, anybody who voluntarily resigns from his political party, joins another political party, should be disqualified. So there was a petition filed before the Manipur Assembly Speaker that please disqualify T. Shyam Kumar on the grounds of defection because he has violated the provisions of anti-defection law. But the Speaker was not acting and the matter went to the court. In a remarkable landmark judgment, 2 judges of the Supreme Court, one of the judges was Rohinton Fali Nariman. The judges said and used a rare power under Article 142. Under Article 142, the Supreme Court can give any order so as to give complete justice in a case. And in this case, the Supreme Court said, Mr. Shyam Kumar, you are no longer a minister. You cannot enter the Legislative Assembly. And the Speaker was given an ultimatum that you have to act on this disqualification petition. And ultimately, the Speaker of Manipur Legislative Assembly acted on this disqualification petition and disqualified Mr. T. Shyam Kumar, who had defected, who was made Forest Minister as well. It was based on this judgment in the Manipur case that Supreme Court asked, should Parliament reconsider? Why should we give this power to the Speaker to decide on the questions of disqualification? Should we not give this power to an external committee or an external institution to take up these matters of disqualification? Because Speaker is the member of the ruling party or the ruling coalition. So he will be biased in favor of the ruling political party. And that is why there was a question in your mains examination as well. Once a speaker, always a speaker. Should we follow the British Convention in India? But be that as it may, something happened in Goa. What happened in Goa? There were 15 MLAs belonging to the Congress party. Out of these 15 MLAs, 10 MLAs, they voluntarily decided to resign from the Congress and they joined the BJP. And they said this is merger. This is not resignation. This is merger. We have merged our party with the BJP. Is this allowed? Perhaps yes. Why? Because under anti-defection law, there is an exception. And the exception is if not less than 2/3 of the members of the political party who are the members of a political party of a house, if they decide to merge with other political party, these MLAs or MPs will not be disqualified. But this merger was questioned in the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has now asked the Speaker of Goa Legislative Assembly to decide on this matter. And to decide on this matter by April 20, whether these 10 MLAs should be disqualified on the grounds of Anti Defection Law or not. Because the Congress party argues that only the MLAs have defected, have merged with the BJP. The party is still the Congress party. The party has not merged with the BJP. So that is why this should not be viewed as merger. It should be viewed as defection, and as such should come under disqualification. Let's see what the court will have to rule on this matter. Now let's look at something else. Something significant is going on in Vienna. Talks begin to revive Iran nuclear deal. Now, Iran was long accused of taking steps for the manufacture of a nuclear bomb. World powers, particularly United States of America, they took various steps to ensure that Iran does not develop a nuclear weapon, because that is going to destabilize the West Asia. If you look at West Asia, Saudi Arabia wants to take the complete control over West Asia. In sense, it wants to become the sole custodian of the voice coming from West Asia. It wants to see itself as the voice of the Muslim community, the Muslim world. So Saudi Arabia is Sunni dominated country and Iran is Shia dominated country. And Shias and Sunnis, these two sects of Islam, they have these sectarian conflicts. And ultimately, Saudi Arabia, we can say, is an enemy of Iran. Iran is an enemy of Saudi Arabia. And then we have Israel. Israel's nuclear policy is ambivalent. In a sense, there are world powers such as United States which claim that they are the world nuclear powers. They have the nuclear weapon. Pakistan, India, China, they claim, yes, we are the nuclear powers because we have openly declared that we have tested the nuclear weapons. Israel does not. Although the world knows that Israel does possess nuclear weapons, but Israel has not openly proclaimed itself as a nuclear power. Its nuclear policy is ambivalent. It neither accepts that they have a nuclear weapon, nor do they deny that they don't have nuclear weapons. So in West Asia, Israel could not afford another country with a nuclear weapon, with a nuclear bomb. And Saudi Arabia, a Sunni-dominated country, could not afford a Shia-dominated country with a nuclear weapon because that will tilt the powers in the region. That is why these two countries, as well as the world powers, they were strongly opposed to any sense of Iran developing a nuclear weapon. That is why sanctions were imposed against Iran. And these sanctions crippled Iranian economy. And look at the condition in Iran because of these sanctions, because of the sanctions even on their oil. But then there was a historic agreement which was signed between Iran, the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, which is United States, France, Russia, China, and United Kingdom, plus one, which is Germany. They together collaborated and came up with an Iran nuclear deal, which is what we call formally JCPOA, Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. This agreement was signed in the year 2015. The basic crux of this deal was Iran has to dismantle its nuclear installations. It has to ensure that it is using uranium only for the civilian purposes. It is not using uranium for manufacturing of the nuclear bomb. So the uranium enrichment had to be minimized. And in return for that, the sanctions imposed by United States and others will be gradually lifted. So this was viewed as a landmark deal which will serve two purposes. Iran will never have a nuclear weapon, and at the same time the sanctions imposed against Iran will be gradually lifted one by one. But both these countries were against this joint comprehensive plan of action because these two countries were happy with the crippling Iranian economy. And few years later, in 2018, the then President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump, unilaterally withdrew from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the Iran nuclear deal. And fresh sanctions were imposed on Iran, and Iran in return also passed a law inside the parliament, inside their own parliament, allowing nuclear uranium enrichment, allowing more and more enrichment of uranium technology. So after the unilateral withdrawal from this Iran nuclear deal by the United States, Iran also decided to some extent not to abide by the conditions of this Iran nuclear deal. And now the world powers, Iran, United States, they are now holding talks, negotiations in Vienna so that Iran and United States can be brought back and United States can re-enter the Iran nuclear deal and Iran would not take steps for the enrichment of uranium leading to the production of a nuclear weapon. And the revival of this Iran nuclear deal is very, very important for a peace in the region. And in fact, Joe Biden, the presidential candidate, when he was the presidential candidate, he had also made a promise that we will go back to the Iranian nuclear deal. He also said we will go back and enter the Paris Climate Agreement, which he did. And now we have to see how far the two sides will drop their differences, shed their inhibitions, and embrace this peaceful negotiation. This is a big, big development. Let's see what is the outcome of these talks. Now let's look at some of the editorials and columns from today's newspaper. The first one is the very, very important newspaper column, Reworking Net Zero for Climate Justice. And this we have decided to cover in detail. This whole Paris Climate Agreement, climate change, and India's responsibility in meeting the Paris Agreement target for 2030. This we will discuss in one of our explained sections. Every Friday, we have an explained weekly current affairs program wherein we explain one topic in great detail. So this climate justice topic we will cover very soon in one of these explained video lectures thoroughly. So please wait for that live session. Now let's look at another important column, redefining combatants. Let's say, for example, here is A and here is B. If A is attacking B, what constitutes this attack? According to 1899 Hague Convention, if we have a commander, this commander should have the control over his subordinates. Then these people who are attacking B, they should have an emblem so that it is recognizable at a distance. This group of people, A, should openly display arms, and this group of people, they must conduct operations in accordance with the laws and customs of war. For example, even if you treat somebody or take somebody as a prisoner, you have to still give him some dignity while treating him in the jail. You can't disrespect the dead, even if it's a war. You can't be indulging in torture, even if it's a war. So this group A, how can we say that this group A is a regular force? And this regular force has attacked another group B, for example, another country B. This group A will be designated as a regular force or will be treated as a regular force if it has a commander who has the control over his subordinates, if they have an emblem because of which we can distinctively recognize this group and they are openly carrying out arms, then this entity B, which can be a foreign country, it can also attack A. And at the same time, according to the international rules, this country B also has a right of a preemptive strike. What is this preemptive strike? For example, India carried out attack on Balakot in the aftermath of the Pulwama attack. Pakistan had not directly attacked India, but then there was credible intelligence input that the terrorists in Balakot, they were carrying out or they were planning fresh attack on the Indian soil. So as some sort of a preemptive measure, because we preempted that there is going to be some element of criminal activity by these terrorists, we preempted that situation and India crossed the line of control into Balakot and then attacked these terrorists. Is this something which is illegal against the international law? No. Why? Because under international law, you have the right of a preemptive strike as well. Which means if you anticipate that a foreign country is going to attack you or is going to wage a war against you or is going to inflict damage on you, you have the right of this preemptive strike. This is what we call self-defense. Now this is a regular attack. What if it is a cyber attack? Where the cyber terrorists, they are not commanded or they may not be commanded by one commander. They may not have an emblem as well because they are not recognizable. They may not be openly displaying arms. All they need to display their software tools. And through cyber attacks, they can cripple our economy. They can destroy our national secrets as well. And all of this threatens our national security. It is argued that when there was a power breakdown in Mumbai, there was a breakdown of the power distribution system last year in October. New York Times came up with a report and said the Chinese cyber hackers were responsible for this. So how can India, who is a victim of these cyber attacks, and we have seen repeated cyber attacks, particularly coming from China, to some extent from Pakistan as well, how should we deal with these cyber attacks? For that, we need to rethink what constitutes a force and what a justified response can be. Because the rules of the war, rules of the game are fast changing. You don't need Chinese army to enter into India or Pakistani army to enter into India and destroy or attack our national security. They can do that by hiring common people who will not constitute a regular force. They may be individuals, not necessarily led by a commander, and through software tools, they can destroy another nation without constituting a regular force. And that is why the author says that we have to redefine who are these combatants, and that is going to play a very important role in our strategy against the cyber attacks. That is it that you need to know from this newspaper article. Now let's look at the practice questions. Two practice questions for today. Please write answers in 150 words and submit to us. If you are our enrolled students, please submit these answers. You know how to submit them, or you can mail your answers to me. I'll be more than happy to evaluate. Question number one, the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Amendment Act 2021 discounts women's bodily autonomy and reeks of ableism. Discuss. Question number two, for a stable West Asia, a return to 2015 nuclear deal is a must. Critically analyze. That is it from our newspaper analysis for today. Thank you for being with us. Have a great evening.